Hi everyone, and welcome back to Waterhouse Forde. So in our last video you saw us completing off or finishing off the as far as we can go at the moment on the front axle. So that's as I said on that video, really pleased with how that's come out. It's looking lovely. But the next phase really is to get into the steering itself before we can connect the steering arms up. Now I mentioned, I think in the last video as well, that this steering box is not great, it's not happy. I'm going to take you through that and we'll basically, obviously step through it. Again, I think I may have said in one of my previous videos as well, I've never actually had one of these open myself. So I'm going to be learning as I go, and obviously I hope that you guys will learn with me. Don't laugh too much when I make mistakes and all that good stuff, but look, yeah, we're just going to work our way through it. I have watched Lance from Bundy Bear Shed. He did a video on this. I've watched that. I've gone, obviously he stepped through it really nicely. Again, obviously if you undertaking this job, I would definitely recommend that you obviously look at our video as well, but definitely go and take a look at his. Lance is a qualified tractor mechanic. He knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing. Whereas we're just hobbyists, and we're just muddling our way through. But nevertheless, look, thanks for joining us today. We're going to work our way through it. Well, we're going to strip it down today. Hopefully, get it off the tractor and work out what we need, what the problem might be, and we'll kind of go from there. But in essence, look, the steering is very stiff. It's very difficult to turn. It's difficult the whole way around. There's no sort of easy spot or tight spot or anything like that. It just feels really tired and really in need of a little bit of TLC. So that's what we're going to give it. Okay, now the first thing I want to show you is, and we were over here in the last video putting this foot peg on, and I should have pointed it out at the time, but it's very obvious that this seal here is leaking. You can see the oil running down here, or seeping down from the seal. So that's an obvious issue that we have to get sorted out. The next thing I wanted to show you was, I don't know if I can't really show you on the video, but as I said, this steering is just really quite tight. Now it's possible that that's in this shaft at the top here. That's sort of what it feels like, but of course I don't actually know. But yeah, and you can see, well, that's not too bad. You can see how responsive that is, but there is a little bit of play in there. I don't know, maybe that's normal, maybe that's as good as it gets, but obviously we'll get into that. Now I believe that the steering wheel has been off, so I'm hoping that it's not going to be too difficult to get it off, but obviously that's the first job, is basically to get that. Yeah, you see that nut is loose. We'll get that off. We'll get the probably get the gear sticker off second, and then we will. Yeah, I think we'll probably take it off here first, and then we will take it off at the base. Now this whole thing obviously comes off, and you've got, I believe you've got bearings or bushes in the shaft over here. So I think there's a bearing at the top, if I'm not mistaken, and a bush down the bottom. And then inside, I believe you've got bearings and bushes in the side here, and then obviously these oil seals that I just pointed out. So probably that's the kind of kit list, or the thing that we're going to need. Also, there's a gasket underneath here, because obviously this is the top of your gearbox, and we will need to replace that. But yeah, look, let's get into it. Okay, so I've moved the camera angle obviously, as you can see, and we're going to start by taking this steering wheel off, which hopefully won't be too difficult, because I believe it was off. I believe the previous owner had it off when they did the shop blasting and the painting. So look, it's there's a collar here and then there's a key. I don't know if that'll come out on the video, but there you can see that has obviously been off before. There's a key in there which we will pop out, and then there's this cup. Now let's just put this down. Now inside the cup there's a felt seal, which I think is like a dust seal. This one then has, yeah, there we go, there's a spring and a spring carrier which actually was stuck inside there, so that wasn't actually doing what it's meant to do. But look, all of that will be replaced. I've actually got all these parts. Again, the previous owner actually had bought all that, and it came with the tractor effectively. Right, so let's start by getting that key off, which hopefully won't be too difficult. No. There we go. There's the key out. Right, now looking at this, it looks like we've got 2 lock nuts. There's also a lock tab underneath. Just try and clean this up a bit. A lot of corrosion in here. Actually, it's just dirt, it's not corrosion as such. Right, let's just well, let's see if we can get that top nut off first. Not sure what size that'll be. It's bigger than that. Looks to be, I would say, about an inch. My adjusting spanner is a bit tired. It doesn't want to adjust. The jaw gets stuck. Okay, that's loose. That's not too bad. Okay. Now we need to just loosen that lock tab. Now that wants to turn the whole thing. Oh, there's another lock tab there. Okay, hopefully that will come off now. Not sure how you're supposed to hold that get it to stop moving. To get the shaft to stop turning. I think maybe what we'll do, we'll take this off here, and I believe there's a gear on the other side, and we can probably hold the gear and then take that off. So let's get that off. First. Okay, now let's see. There we go. Now look, somebody's put some sort of silicone sealant on there, which is not ideal. The oil feels good. Now what I want to do very quickly is just put the steering wheel back on here and see whether that stiffness that we were feeling, whether I was feeling, whether that is in this piece or whether it's in the box itself. Because you should be able to turn your steering wheel. When your steering arms are not connected, you should be able to turn your steering wheel with one finger essentially. Now look, that is very stiff. And I reckon that's where our problem is. Our problem is these bearings in here are gone. So that's where the problem lies. But we're going to go through the whole thing anyway. And work our way through while we're here. Okay, so I'm going to go put this down. I'll get rid of all of these parts, put them in a safe place, and then we'll get on to the main box. Okay, I think we should get the gear lever off next. That's probably a good logical next step. So we'll pop that off. And I believe that should just pop off. There we go. So you've got your spring in your selector. We'll maybe go through that at some point. Mostly just to clean it up, but we can see there now selectors are all lined up, so we know we need to be in neutral when we go back. Okay, so that got that out of the way. Now, in terms of getting this oil out, I don't have an oil suction pump, which would be the ideal to use at this point, I think. But if I understand it correctly, underneath this housing is a tin shield, and that tin shield is keeping this oil separate from the gearbox oil. Otherwise the oil would just run straight out into the gearbox and there'd be none in the steering box. I'm hoping that that will be sufficient. That tin shield will be enough to hold that oil in whilst we take this off. and then at least I can drain this by essentially just by turning it over, turning it upside down. Now on the side here we've got these two, there's a lock nut and it's basically a screwdriver head, flathead screw that goes in there, and they run against your gears inside here and prevent those gears from opening up when you turn that crown gear on the steering mechanism. What I want to do is just try and loosen those whilst this assembly is on here, in case they're very, very tight and we can't get them off, or we need the actually that's very loose, so not much point messing with that. And that seems to be okay. That is nice and loose, and loose on the nut is loose on the screw as well. So that one's fine. Let's have a look at this one. Interesting, that one, the screwdriver doesn't want to go in. See if that'll hold it. There we go. And the screw is loose as well. Perfect. Okay, so look, now what we want to do is take all of these perimeter bolts out, and then we should be able to lift this whole assembly up essentially off of the gearbox. To do that, we will grab our trusty 11/16 socket and we'll work our way around. Oh, there's a tight. Okay, I'm going to get the impact, I think. Now the interesting thing is that is not an 11/16. Somebody's changed that. I'm not sure where it is now, but it might be. Looks like somebody might have put a metric bolt on there. It's a 5/8. There's somebody's definitely been in here. You can see the. Hopefully you can see on the camera. There's some kind of Loctite or something being put on there. We saw there's silicone on here. So obviously at some point somebody's replaced that one for some reason. Interesting. Okay. Right, I think that's all of them. Oh, maybe not. There we go. Okay. Now, as far as I know, these are all the same length, but we'll just double check as we take them out. Obviously, except for that one. Oh no, okay, so these two here are probably a little bit longer. Yeah. Okay, so we'll remember that. Yeah, looks like it's only those two that are a little bit longer, probably about it's difficult to say. I suppose 1/4 of an inch must be. Okay, now we don't want too much junk going into the gearbox, so I'm going to just clean this up before I try and lift this. Just going to put a rag in there. Now, bearing in mind we've got oil in here, so we don't want to tip this in any great way. I don't know, I'm probably going to have to crack this seal. There we go. And there we are. Now, just whilst we're here, we have obviously these little springs here that we want to look after and not lose. They provide tension on the gear selectors. And we seem to have some water here, which is not very encouraging or promising. But looking down into the gearbox, the gears all look really, really neat. Very happy about that. And of course you can see here we've got a paper gasket that I mentioned earlier, and that will have to be replaced. And in fact you need two of these, right? So there's one, this one, and then on, I'll take you over to the steering box in a minute, but basically under the steering box there is there's a tin shield, and underneath that there's exactly the same gasket again, I believe. So look, this is all going to have to be cleaned up. We're going to have to do that really carefully so that we don't get any junk, in particular into the gearbox on this side. Got a little bit of junk in the gear selectors there, so we'll get that cleaned out. But this water is definitely worrying me a little bit. It so far doesn't seem to have gone in anyway. But that's probably, hopefully, just condensation on, and or it could very well be water in the steering box, sitting underneath the oil. But we'll see when we get in there. Okay, let's go over to the workbench. Okay, while the steering box is draining, I've got it hanging up. I'll show you in a minute. I've got it hanging over a tub at the moment, just draining the oil out. It's very, very thick oil. I'm not sure what they've put in there, but that's fine. Whilst that's just draining, I've put this the top assembly into the vise, as you can see, with a bunch of soft jaws clamping on that pinion gear. Pinion gear. And what I want to do is try and get this bolt or this nut off. Now, I'm going to put a little bit of lubricant on that, if I can find it. It's a problem with having two parts to the workshop. Every time you want something, it's on the other side of the workshop. I know, first world problems, eh? Look, let's try that. If that doesn't work, we might give it a bit of a smack just to try and loosen it, but I'm hoping this isn't going to be too tight, to be honest. There we go. There we go. Right, then we've got this lock tab washery thing that comes off. Now we can see this, I'm pretty sure that it's this bearing that is probably terribly corroded, but in theory I think that we should now be able to pop this out. I'm sure that bearing is going to be quite tight on there. Make sure I'm not missing a circlip or anything silly like that. There we go. I wasn't expecting that to come out quite as easily as that, but when it decided to go, it went. Yeah, so you can see we've got two taper roller bearings in there. That's the bottom one, and that it's sticky, but it doesn't feel too bad. I'll put it back in the race. Yeah, that one's not too bad. But I'm pretty certain this one at the top is going to be not so happy. We can see that has, that's one piece. It should come out as one piece. That's actually the inner collar of the bearing. You can see the water in there, and that is very, very sticky, very crunchy inside there. So that, I believe, will be the majority of our problem. That feels like sandpaper basically, and when that would have been under a little bit of tension there, you can imagine how stiff that would have been. So now I'm guessing there'll be a race in here that we've got to get out. You can kind of see it there. I think you can see that, yeah. And on the bottom you can see the race quite clearly. There it is there. And that needs to be pressed out or knocked out. So that's that. And then looking at this shaft itself, you know, the crown gear, that looks to be in pretty good shape. I'll just try and get that cleaned up a little bit. Yeah, look, those teeth look pretty good to me. There's no obvious signs of wear or chips. And the back side as well. Yeah, so that just needs to be cleaned up. There's a little bit of rust on the center of the shaft here. That'll clean up, no problem. That's nothing to worry about. This is basically running in air, right? So there's nothing here. Obviously you've got your bearing point here and your bearing point there, and that's how it basically turns on those 2 points. So there's not much to worry about there. We'll clean these threads up, and that will be good to go. So need to get these bearings replaced, and yeah, I'll have to try and measure those up and see which ones they are, and we'll get the old racers out of here. Interesting thing is this one seems to have some sort of shield. You can't see that, sorry. Let me turn this around. There we go. See, that's got some sort of shield there. I'm guessing that's to stop any muck that gets through. Well, actually, I suppose when you've got grease on here, you don't want the grease falling down this shaft. You want to try and hold it up there, whereas this bottom one doesn't really matter. So yeah, we'll need to try and find those parts. And yeah, so we'll move on to the main steering box now. I'll get those measured up and hopefully ordered soon, and we can sort that top part out, which seems to have been our main problem. Okay, so you can see we've got the steering box hanging upside down just on the engine crane, and just draining the oil out. There's quite a lot of oil came out, not much water, or no water that I can see, but the oil is quite thick. It's almost like treacle. So I need to research. I'm not quite sure. I'm guessing, I suppose, the gear oil is probably right to go in there, given that it is ostensibly gears operating inside there. But so you can see this tin shield, this tin plate rather, that covers the bottom of the steering box, and then of course it's open over here for the gear lever to come through, and of course your filler. There's a little bit of surface rust on here, nothing too concerning. We'll get that cleaned up, and we'll make sure that that is nicely coated again before we put it back. Now you've got these screws here. I think there should be one here somewhere, but these screws, just all they do is hold the tin shield or the tin plate in place. They're not there to seal anything, but essentially between this tin plate and the housing there's another gasket identical essentially to this one. So do remember, if you're doing this job, that you need 2 gaskets for this job. Okay, well look, let's get this off, get it up on the bench, and we'll see if we can get these screws out and start dismantling the steering box. Okay, so we've got this up on the bench, obviously upside down, and we got a couple of screws, as I said. So there's one there. I'm pretty sure there should be one in the center here somewhere. Probably there. Yeah, that's it there. And then there should be one here. One there. Just cleaning the slots so we can get a screwdriver in there. Hopefully these aren't too tight. They're not meant to be horrendously tight. As I said, they're really only there to hold the tin shield in place whilst you put it on. Yeah, those are thankfully not very tight, which is good news. Okay, so this tin cover should come off. You want to be careful not to bend it, so you want to loosen it all the way around before you start tugging at it. There we go. Oi, 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 look at that. So, a horrendous amount of gunk on the bottom here. Not even sure what that is. That almost seems like sawdust. I mean, no, it's mud basically. Just dirt that's managed to make its way into the steering box, and it's all over here. But the steering box itself doesn't look too bad. Now, before we go any further, what we want to do is try to check the bushes on here. So there's a bush in the center, and then there's one on either side. So what we're looking for is any sideways movement on these shafts, and look, those, they feel very, very firm, which is good news. Okay, no, that looks good. So look, we may get away with not needing to replace bushes on this. I'm going to obviously check them again when everything is out and this has been properly cleaned up. Now, to get these shafts out, it's hopefully relatively simple. We've got this bolt, nut and bolt that runs through here. We take that off, and then the whole lot should come out from the side. I'm hoping I can. There we go, that came off nicely. There's a nut and a spring washer. Seems to be in good condition. Turn it around and we should be able to knock that bolt out. There we go. Just like that. It's a nice, clean, well, good looking bolt. It doesn't seem to be any issue with that other than it's got lots of very sticky oil on it, which is probably a good thing. Right, now we hopefully can pull this shaft out. Coming. There we go. Good. Now on the shaft you can see there's the little cutout for the bolt to go through, and then we've got the spline, and on the opposite side there's a master, or a groove for a master spline, and in the gear now, which is this sort of half moon shaped gear. So first of all, there you can see that's where that adjustment bolt, this one here, has been running on the back of this face, and that is what basically holds tension against the pinion gear, because obviously with the pinion gear turning, these want to push out. So those two bolts are holding it. Number one, they're adjusting your free play between the pinion gear and this half crown gear essentially, but also preventing those from pushing out and opening up, because the natural force would be to open up, and what you want is them to stay in place and therefore be turned in opposite directions like that, which is basically how your steering works. So that looks good. Yeah, again, I don't know what oil this is, but it's really, really sticky. And that face looks nice and clean, nice and smooth. These gears, initial look is pretty good. We've got a little bit of a nick on that corner, but that's where somebody has basically turned the steering beyond its limit and has basically cracked that off. When we put this all back together, we'll see about or we'll learn about how that works. Now again, I don't think the camera will pick it up, but in here we've got a master spline, which obviously then corresponds with the spline on this shaft. Now my understanding is that these two half crown gears are the same part, so there's no difference between left and right. But obviously these shafts, there is a left and a right. So this one is obviously, the box is currently upside down, so this is normally the right hand one when you're sitting on the tractor, and the other one of course is the left hand one. So look, that goes back something like that. You found that spline. There it is there. So we'll keep those two together, so we know, well, more importantly, we know this is the right hand one, which is on the left hand side when it's upside down. This bolt obviously has to line up with that cutout in the spline, which is there, and it's worth noting that that bolt goes, it must go this way. There's a cutout on here, which the head of the bolts is essentially captured by, to prevent it from turning, so that you don't have to hold it when you're tightening it or unloosening it on the other side. So look, we'll just keep that together for now, and we'll take the other one out quickly, which is exactly the same thing. And that bolt wants to fall out now, so I don't suppose it matters actually if it does. There we go, and then that shaft should pull out. There we go, and that half crown gear comes out as well, and you can see the muck in here as we're taking this apart. This thing is absolutely covered in rubbish. Now part of that will be obviously us taking this apart, turning it upside down to drain the oil, etc., because normally the muck would obviously sit on the bottom and it wouldn't be a problem, right? But now we've turned it upside down, and some of it has gone back through the system, or through the mechanism. But same thing on here, we just want to check that surface. Very, very minor pitting on this corner here, but otherwise it looks fine. It's certainly good enough. These are not hard wearing parts, right? If you think about it, they're not doing a huge amount of work. A little bit of a nick on that one, but nothing too bad. We'll get all these cleaned up properly and then we can inspect them properly. It's worth noting on here, obviously this is the face that your seal sits on. So that wants to be nice and clean. You get that nicely polished before you put it all back together. And this side runs inside a bush, and so again you want that to be nice and tidy. There's a very minor wear mark there, but I can't feel it with my nail, so that's okay. Right, let's just put this back the way it was so that we keep them together, and pop that in there. There we go. And look, that's well, that's the main part of this. The next bit really is probably just to take these adjustment nuts out, and then we'll get the seals out. So let's just turn this over. You can see all the oil and muck coming out there. Try and get that on the paper. Okay, let's make sure we can still see that. Yeah. Okay, so really easy job is to get these out. These are your adjustment screws. We want to get those cleaned up, make sure the threads are in good order, which they seem to be, but we'll just clean them up anyway. There we go, and that's your obviously your wearing, or not wearing, but rubbing face, right? So that runs against the back of that half crown, and then this is your lock nut, which basically just locks it in place. Same on the other side, so we'll get that one out. That lock nut has come off. Okay. I'm really pleased that the threads on here are really good. It seems to me that somebody's been through this steering box reasonably recently, if that makes sense. Because compared to the rest of the tractor, this seems to be, internally at least, seems to be in better order than most of the rest of this tractor. Quite a lot of dirt there though, that's surprising given the state of everything else, but there you go. Okay, now these are the seals, right? So the seals, this is what's leaking essentially, and they're quite an interesting seal because it's kind of on the outside with the, yeah, that seems like I think it's a leather seal inside there. Now the only way I know of taking this off is to get something in behind here, which is a bit of a worry because this is a alloy casing. It marks very easily. You don't really want to hit this too much. There we go, it's starting to go. There we go. So you see, this is like basically tin clad. Capturing, I suppose, leather on the inside. Now I don't know whether these are still available or not. I'm going to have to find out. I'm sure that you can get a standard sort of lip seal that'll go in there, but obviously they won't be very original, or won't look original. Now, just looking in here, interestingly there's a lot of dirt underneath that seal, and that'll be why it was leaking, frankly. Yeah, there's basically dirt packed behind there. Now I'll tell you what's happened here. Somebody has, yeah, look here. There's normally a flat face here, and that's been ground off. And what they've done is they've basically pushed the seal, while this is still on the tractor, they've pushed it, obviously pulled the old seal out, brought it all the way back over here, and then pushed the new one up and around. Now there it gets sort of stuck, but they've pushed it anyway, and they've pushed it all the way in. And the point is that before they did that, they never got all the dirt out of here. They couldn't, because the arm was here, so it's really difficult to get in there to do it. And as a result, they've got dirt stuck behind that seal, and that's why the seal has been leaking. That's why that, and the fact that to get that seal over that arm, you have to kind of force it over. You saw how I had to force it, and that will have probably damaged the seal, even if only slightly, enough that over time, combined with that dirt be sitting behind there, the seal has failed. The good news, however, is that these bushes look absolutely fine. I can't see any undue wear on that at all, which is that is incredible. It also tells me that this dirt has not come from inside the gearbox and coming out. It's come from the outside, basically, which is a real shame, because somebody has done a reasonable job on this box. Fortunately, they took a little bit of a shortcut there, for goodness only knows what reason, because they must have had the whole thing off anyway, and decided to take a shortcut. Anyways, let's get this one off. And it looks to me like we've got pretty much the same problem going on here. Hopefully the camera can see that, but lots of dirt behind that seal, where the seal should be sealing. And it's not just oil, it's grit. Literally. Look at that. You see that on my fingers. Anyways, that's why we're here, and that's why we're doing this job. That's why we do it properly. So again, that bush seems fine, and it's a little bit more difficult to see the inner one. But it feels really good. Feels good. Right. Well, look, I think that's probably it for now. That's about as far as we can go. Obviously you've got the filler cap, or the filler plug. Which now doesn't want to come off. we go. And you've also got the filler cap or filler plug for the gearbox. But other than that, this can now go for cleaning and order the parts and get it all put back together again. Good. Well, that was interesting. Obviously learning as we go here, but looks like a relatively simple mechanism. You know, obviously you've got that pinion gear coming down from the top, the two half crowns, and obviously as one turns one way, the other one turns the other way, and that pushes your steering rods, and of course that turns your wheels left or right as you want to steer. So nice chunky bits as well. There's nothing in there that you know, is flimsy and is going to be too susceptible. So yeah, right, look, let's leave it there for today. Thank you very much for joining us, for following along, and of course I hope that some of this was interesting and informative to some of you. We'll get all this cleaned up and we'll order the parts, and we'll work out what we need, and we'll come back in hopefully not too far in the future, and we'll put this all back together again and show you how to do that. So listen, thanks for watching, thanks for following the channel, and we continue to make videos as much or as often as we can, and we just thank you for following along and sticking with us. Hope that you all have a good week, and see you on the next video. Cheers for now.